please feel free to do so. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, remember to attend Aaron's masterclass later in the afternoon as well, just behind us. And there's a Hmong 5 feet going on right now. Do we have it? Yes, we do. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, can we send them off with a round of applause once again for the very invigorating session? Thank you so very much for sharing very candidly and very honestly some practical insights on how we can overcome the challenges. Thank you, Aaron. See you later at the masterclass. All right, ladies and gentlemen, what's next for you? I want to tell you the next session is titled Women in Robotics. What can you expect? There you go. Wow. Thanks for the applause. Always good to have the support. And of course, up next, we will be featuring leading women in the robotics industry, sharing their journeys, their challenges, and also you will get to know all about their contributions to the field. The conversation on stage will spotlight their roles in driving innovation, advancing open source technology, and very importantly as well, shaping the future of robotics. Now, during the earlier session, you did so well by sending in many questions. I thank you for them. I would love for you to send in more questions. So I'm going to scan the QR code once again on screen to show you. And you can, of course, go to the website pigeonhole.at as well and key in the word beyond to ask a question right now. Now, before we start the next session, I'd like to welcome you to come to as far front as possible. We've got plenty of space. It will mean a lot for our ladies to see you right up close and personal for the next talk. All right, this is co-organized by A-Star ARTC, brought to you by Ross I Consortium Asia Pacific, supported by EDB, NRP, and SGI. Ladies and gentlemen, what a great pleasure and joy to welcome our panelists on stage right now for the topic Women in Robotics. Leading us as the moderator, please put your hands together for Ms. Suchitra Narayan, Head of Advanced Manufacturing and Energy Investment for SGI. Welcome. Please be seated over here. And let's bring on the powerhouses in the industry. Can we give it up for our women in robotics? Let's give them a big hand. Come and join us on stage. So Chitra, we're all ready for you. Very excited to get the panel going. Welcome, ladies. And of course, have a great time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. And I'm glad to see a lot of men in the audience. So really appreciate your support here. So welcome to our session on designing with diversity and shaping the future of robotics. So when we think about robotics, we're often thinking about machines. Today we want to spend a little bit of time thinking about the people behind these machines, the people designing them. Because women are not just participating in robotics, they're actually leading, they're innovating, they're shaping the way, they're shaping industry, research, startups, and industry. From a big context, why do we want to talk about this? Because global robotics market is going to be about 260 billion by 2030. By the same time, AI-enabled robotics are going to perform about half of all the industrial automation tasks. And while these statistics sound big, women in robotics and AI only represent 25% of the workforce, but the contributions are already punching well beyond 25%, from driving advances in AI to building robotic startups to those that scale globally. So we're not today, I just want to be clear, we're not on this panel to talk about diversity for diversity's sake. That takes away from the capabilities of the fantastic women panelists that we have on stage here. We're talking about bringing a different perspective into robotics in the context of leadership, in the context of innovation, and in the context of influence that these women have for the field of robotics. So women in robotics, they're shaping where the field goes next, and that's what we're going to explore together. We've got a few subtopics, such as diversity as a strategic advantage, embodied AI, global trends, but we'll wrap up with career journeys and reflections, which I think is what you all would want to hear today. So we're fortunate to have three extraordinary women with us who are shaping this from various vantage points, by the way, academia, investments, industry, and so on. And they're going to tell us about how to deploy scale intelligence from both responsibly and inclusively. So allow me a second for a quick introduction of myself, and then I'm going to request the panelists to introduce themselves as well. I'm Suchitra Narayan, Suchi for short, and I head up investments for SG Innovate in the areas of advanced manufacturing and energy. Min-Ling, over to you.
Hi, so my name is Min-Ling. I'm the Vice President of Hyundai Motor Group Innovation Center here in Singapore, and I'm responsible for the Technology Innovation Group. So we have about 130 people in my team.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Malika. I'm an assistant professor at Singapore University of Technology and Design. I'm the director for the Multi-Agent Robot Vision and Learning Lab, and very happy to be here. Thank you so much, Suchitra, for a great
Thank you.
introduction.
We're happy to have you. Samantha.
Hi, thank you. Hi, everyone. Samantha, or you call me Sam, from Infocom and Media Development Authority, IMDA. So essentially, we work with companies to adopt technologies so that they can transform and grow. So we work with companies from all sectors. Happy to be here.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you for making time. So the agenda for this session, we have about 35 minutes for the session left. We will have audience Q&A, so if you have some questions, please do submit them. The QR code was given to you, or feel free to just stand up and shout out, but I have some prepared questions to start the panel with. So to set the scene for the discussion, what are some of the new shifts in the technological landscape that you all are seeing from various perspectives that's ushering in the next era of robotics? And how is the shift, impact how people use robotics and how people are looking at automation?
I think for robotics, especially from the company's perspective, it's no longer about a good to have. I think companies are seeing it as a necessity for growth. Because of a myriad of reasons, right? It can be in terms of manpower, it could be in terms of wanting to capture new markets or even do innovative stuff. So I think robotics is definitely a very core technology, and it has to be infused into a lot of the business core functions of many of our companies today. And also, the way I see it is a lot of the companies are also focusing not just on the technology, they're also looking at the entire organization, their processes, their culture, how do they get their staff to also adopt and get everyone trained and be part of the journey together. So to me, I think it's very exciting because robotics is definitely something that is there, and we just have to see how we can harness it and leverage on it for its, the greater potential.
That's interesting because I think we'll touch upon that later, but what you're talking about is its enterprise level transformation. It's not about a point solution of getting robotics in. Love it. I'll keep that in mind and we'll get back to that. Malika.
Thanks, Suchi. So I'll take a bit of a historical perspective here. Like, when we first started off in robotics, it used to be like these pre-programmed robots that would do a defined task itself. From there, the field has actually moved on to sensing-based robotics. So like you would sense and then act and plan. And so from that perspective, now the controls is also sort of like learned on the go in terms of the emergent behaviors. So rather than like mapping all the sensing information and then processing that into some of the low-level controls, it's actually starting to learn these emergent behaviors based on what it's been sensing. So from that perspective, we've actually now gone into the next level where how the teams of robots can work together collectively as a collective intelligence. And with the foundation models, of course, everything has exploded, and that's where when foundation models are meeting like robotics domain, that's where the next big shift is going to be, because LLMs are really good at maybe acting as a high-level planner, but when it comes to like physical understanding of the space and spatial understanding of how things are and how distances are measured, I think it's not there yet. And that's where I think a lot of innovation is going to come in, a lot of efficiency in both data as well as learning-based processes will come in. And I think that's the exciting part, like we are looking forward to.
Lovely. So I'm looking forward to a startup from you in that space, in that case.
Wow.
Okay, so I have a longer history in robotics. I think I've had a history of about 10 years in robotics. I've seen it shift, as you said. But for us at Hyundai, it's also a complexity problem. It's not easy, robotics. We're talking about AI, vision, hardware, software integration, automation. And we need to use this ecosystem that we have here in Singapore. So the likes of A-Star, ARTC, and ROS-I, these are very important for us. Even the open source modules from ROS, they are the building blocks for us in order to build further. So the other aspect is, I just wanted to bring out the fact, I have an intern, software engineering intern, who's working with the Boston Dynamics Spot. And she's been just put in the deep end, learn how to use it, learn how to work with our operators towards a robotic-assisted, human-centric application. So we're looking at this kind of human-centric application for the ecosystem of Hyundai here in Singapore, but also Hyundai Motor Group globally.
Very exciting, very, very exciting. And we're going to touch upon that as well in a couple of minutes because I want to just keep that in mind too. How do you, and Minling, maybe we'll start with you since you have the mic. How do you actually think women are shaping the current and the next wave of robotics? So we're sort of moving from what Sam alluded to, which is automation, to augmentation of human capability. It's not about just automating a factory anymore. So how do you think women play a specific role in that?
That's a really good question. I'm going to go to the diversity question.
Please do.
The women give a different perspective in terms of creativity and innovation. We see things differently because of the things that we are exposed to on a day-to-day basis. So for me, the females in my team who's responsible for robotics, they bring in that perspective. And it's very important because even if we have robotics in our factory floor, and we have quite a lot, it needs to be working hand in hand with our operators. You know, just because it's automated doesn't mean that the operators don't need to maintain it, update the calibration of this robotic code, and that's needed. So this is the different perspective about how do we maintain those robotic ecosystems that we have in the plant.
I love it, and I love the fact that you said women in plural that are working on with you in the world of robotics. Do you have a different perspective now?
Yes. So I think coming from the point like the diversity aspect of things, I mean, the equation is simple, right? Like we have women as in general sum up to 50% of the population. So if that perspective is missing in any product, not just robotics, it's going to like, I mean, people are going to lose out that 50% of the population as the product comes out. So definitely that's the first level to kind of think about it. And then the second thing I feel is that in general, we are very, as women, we pay attention to details like small things, and we are very peculiar, like we are very focused on like these things being part of the product as well. So this is exactly what we need in terms of like, I mean, chiming in with what Mingling said, that it's a human-centric approach that we need to kind of go towards. It's not about like replacement, but instead augmentation of the technology with human in loop and the robots working along with them. If the woman is not part of the innovation, that important perspective is not theirs, and the attention to detail perhaps may not come into the level that we are expecting. And another aspect I just want to briefly touch upon is the ethics aspect of things. Like, you know, I feel like, of course, everyone is equally contributing towards these aspects, but given that that we do boil down into like from the empathetic point of view, like we look at how the final product will look like when it goes out into the real world. I think there's a lot more space for innovation for women in those areas of like AI transparency, AI openness, robotics openness as well, to share their models and bring in the ethics factor and the empathy factor in the whole process. So I think there's lots that women can bring to the table in that perspective.
Very fair point. Do you have a perspective on this, Sam?
Yeah, I'm going to be a bit controversial here. I think
Love it. Go for it.
because I think the term human-centric, whether you're male or female, doesn't matter, if you ask me, okay? Because, I mean, my cluster, we meet about, I think the last 2 years we met about 1,000 companies, about 1,000 companies in Singapore, and there are males and female leaders, right? So it really doesn't matter on whether I agree with diversity and all that, yeah, but I feel at the end of the day, it's how you're going to deploy technology and what you do with it. True, sometimes maybe the female leader sees certain things in a different perspective compared to the guys, but at the end of the day, we can learn from each other. I give you an example. One of the project IMDA works with is the Mandai Wildlife Group. It's a zoo, and we are working with them to deploy concierge robots. And the deputy CEO, Belina, is a female leader. She keeps saying that the robots is not doing its job. You really need to think about whether we can improve the concierge robot and improve the customer experience. To her team, it's like, oh, is it a tech? Maybe we should tweak the tech. Maybe we should look at how the AI is working and what should we do. But actually, all she's talking about is if I have a kid looking at the robot compared to an elderly or an adult looking at the robot, how different is the interaction? So that's all she's talking about. So whether it's a female or male, actually we can all learn from each other. How do we deploy robotics in a very impactful manner to solve certain problems and, of course, to overcome certain challenges that we face, whether it's on the work or on the customer service in that sense, yeah.
Mic drop moment, Sam. Like, I feel we're done with the panel.
Okay.
Love it. I love that human perspective of that. So, I totally agree. I think people bring in different perspectives. People see problems differently. And it's not just diversity from a perspective of gender, but also different cultures, different exposure, different environments. I mean, people in like the Nordics bring in different experiences to the Americans, to the Europeans, to the Australians, to the Singaporeans, Indians, Chinese, whoever you might be. So I do think that teams are richer when they have diversity of women, but also culture and geographic diversity. So that makes a lot of sense. And also we have evidence to prove, honestly, folks, we have evidence to show that boards with female representations tend to perform better. It's just because of perspective. It's not because of the woman or the man. But Malika and Minling, do you have examples where, I know Sam just shared, but where gender, culture, geographic, any of these diversities have improved either safety or the design or a particular robotic system? You've seen the outputs coming out to be something that was problem solved.
Yeah, I think going back to what Sam was sharing earlier, people have actually, at least in my team, we have like 50-50% ratio, which I'm very excited and proud about. So the experiences in the design and the other frameworks that they develop come from their own experiences in the past. Like how did they feel when they started off in the field? Was safety the most important aspect, or like the human interface was the important aspect, or the intelligence aspect of it? So it was coming more from their own respective cultural background and the upbringing. Rather than from a gender perspective, I would say. But of course, if the challenges that are there are biased towards gender, then the solutions are also biased towards that particular gender. So that was the only difference that you would see. Yeah.
Fair enough. Did you have
I'm
a
going to
comment?
go a bit techie here.
Okay, go for it.
I see difficulties in the robotic landscape, right? We need an ecosystem. So with Ross I, you have Suri, you have OSO, Fraunhofer, and then you have ARTC. This ecosystem is needed because we haven't mapped the full robotic landscape yet. So if you were to look at all the robotic drivers and controllers, I can't use all of it, and I cannot deploy a standardized solution in all my plants. And this is needed. The standardized solution, the ecosystem of open source solution. And in terms of people and experience, for me, it's important that we gather diversity through geography. Different universities teach robotics in a different way in terms of mentality and viewing the code and also how that connection works. It's not always standardized across the countries. And I see that European, especially the German laws, are very, very good and strong on safety. And we can learn a lot from them. So it's bringing all the different important standards globally into Singapore and then into the teams to make sure that they take the best from the different diversity team members and then build on this.
Lovely. I want to give a shout out to Maria here, who's brought in the capabilities of Rossai to APAC and has been championing this for many, many years. So being a female, thank you for that championing. You're the co-founder. Lovely. There you go. There you go. Now, we have two co-founders, two women, interestingly enough, who are championing the cause. So I wanted to give her a shout out as well. So getting us started, when we talk about robotics and where it's heading from a technology standpoint, embodied AI and Industry 5.0, they're opening all sorts of frontiers for not just replacing labor, but for robots working with us to amplify human performance in majority of the places. So Malika, maybe I'll start with you. At the Marvel Lab in SUTD, you talked to me when we were in the holding room about multi-robot systems. You're actually pushing the frontiers of multi-robot systems and intelligent autonomy. Could you share some of the interesting developments in this place with us, and particularly those that can advance embodied AI, and how is this being used in practice?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for asking that. So our mission, again, is sort of like the human-centric autonomy for multi-robot teams, as well as teams that can work with human partners in the required applications. So basically, the developments that we have seen, and I kind of briefly mentioned earlier, was that the controls and the low-level aspect of like how the behaviors of the robots work used to be all pre-programmed based on some sensed environments. So like basically, if you're doing like water quality monitoring or like coral reef monitoring in that sense, like some of the projects that we've been doing, it would just look at the sensed environment and do a particular pre-programmed behavior. And from that point of perspective, we have actually now moved from a pre-programmed behavior to learning-based approach, which is sort of like looking at, hey, this is what I'm sensing, and here my other people, like other agents are in the system, and how do I sort of reconfigure in self, like to get the best outcome for the overall mission. And from that perspective, now we are leaping towards the foundation models, wherein like, let's say, there are new inputs that the human has, and they want to give that to the team of robots. How can they kind of like give those inputs just in natural language, and then that can be translated into a global mission for the entire collective robots. So we are kind of like going towards that area, wherein like the augmentation is going to become seamless in the sense where the effort to kind of like give new hints to the robot to kind of work with them will become like very easy to follow. So the robots will start to like become an equal partner in the process, or even like adapt in certain scenarios where, depending upon the skill level of the human, let's say the skill levels are pretty good, then the interactions might be minimal, but in the cases where the skill levels are just at the beginner level, the robot might take up a bit more burden, and these all would come up through interactions naturally, rather than like telling that, hey, I am a beginner, or versus like I'm an advanced user in a priori. So that's one exciting area that we are looking at, where the robots are able to sort of like adjust themselves based on the skill levels as well as the preferences of the teammates. So rather than like always doing a particular task, it's sort of like saying that, hey, looks like this is not so much of a preferred task in a joint scenario with human and robot. Let me take on these things as well. And again, all of this is sort of coming in as a emergent behavior and learning on the go, rather than like pre-programming it at the start. Yeah. So that's
very exciting times ahead. Yeah, very exciting. Minling, switching to you at HMGICS, you're at the frontier of smart manufacturing, and you said you've been in robotics for 10 years. So how are these automation and robotic solutions sort of being integrated into your vision to push the factories to be more smarter, or it could be mobility ecosystems? What's your perspective on that?
Okay, so first I had to tell a story where Hyundai is going in the future. We have a vision of a software-defined factory, the combination of automation and software. So in the future, we would envisage that we have a lot of robotics and different types of robotics. There's exoskeleton, industrial robots, collaborative robots, and they're going to assist our operators, which means our operators will have more time, and the people on the shop floor will have more time to be creative, to problem solve, and to be innovative. In my team, we work very closely with our manufacturing counterparts to make sure that if we make a change on the software side or automation side, we do involve them in the full change management process. And for me, that's important because, you know, the concept of the future and Industry 5.0, where we have the human-centric approach, this is what we're doing in the future, and also in Singapore.
Fantastic, exciting as well. Sam, maybe to round off the conversation, you're looking at things from a very different perspective. So your cluster is looking at enterprise transformation, but including technologies such as robotics, not just robotics. So how does IMDA work with industry and the ecosystem to sort of ensure that you're proliferating robotics for both productivity, but also from a growth perspective for these various industries?
Thanks for the question. I think for the many SMEs here, they're probably very interested to hear as well.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. No, I think to be very clear, when we help companies, we kind of archetype the enterprises in two buckets. Those that are very new to digitization, so we call them they just need to adopt tech solutions and then just deploy and then just run with it. For those that are not new to it, they are probably the slightly more mature ones and slightly bigger enterprises. For them, they are looking at how to continue their growth, how to continue the competitiveness and continue to stay ahead of their competitors. So for this group of companies, technologies and robotics make sense because they are talking about expansion, they're talking about innovation. When we did a focus group with, I think, 50 over companies last year, we realized 40% of them actually said that they have invested in robotics, they want to continue. And they shared with us, about 20% of them shared that it actually helped them in their productivity growth and safety as well. And about 15% of them actually said that with deployment of robotics, right, they actually were able to retain their staff. And these are all very important parameters as a company that's on, growing and becoming bigger in that sense. For the other 60% of the companies that we talk to, all of them want to start thinking about using technologies like robotics. But the key question is always, how do I do it? What do I do? Who do I go to? So that's where for IMDA, we focus on a three-pronged approach where we talk to companies. Firstly, we do want to talk to the leaders of these enterprises, try to help them understand. It's not just buy a magic bullet and there you go. You really need to understand that it's about an enterprise transformation. So buying robotics is not difficult, of course, right? But how do you infuse it into your strategy, your operation? So we do want to get the leaders to uplift their mindsets in that sense. And the second prong we take is get them a bit of confidence when they deploy technology. Because a lot of companies tell us, okay, I hear about robotics, I hear about agentic AI, embodied AI, I don't know how to do it. So, okay, maybe we work with you, we start a small project, we build a bit of a confidence, as you do this, and then from there we capture and codify what are some of the key insights or learnings that you need to have before you scale up the deployment of technology. So that confidence project is important. And of course, lastly, we do want to tell them, okay, how do you infuse this into your BAU after that, right? It's about building some sort of self-sustaining capabilities. So as an organization, we don't want to just support you to buy a tech and then carry on, We want you to build internal competencies and capabilities. So do you want to think about hiring a robotics engineer? Do you want to think about hiring an AI engineer? So that eventually your company can really grow and infuse technology into that. So for us in IMD, we work with these more mature companies whom we call digital leaders. We focus on these three core aspects: the leadership, building the confidence, and then how do we help them continue in that journey? Yeah.
I love it. It's such a holistic perspective because you can't solve problems by buying a piece of hardware.
No.
So they while everybody wants to get on the robotics bandwagon, what is it? What do you want to do with these robots and who's going to operate them and training? Love that holistic perspective. So we've sort of talked about how diversity is, conceiving the way robots are shaped, designed, deployed. But in order for robotics to truly scale and make a global impact, we need a little bit more than strong engineering. We need strong capital. right? We need supportive policies from the government folks out there. We need an ecosystem. We need inclusion. We need innovation, right? And as a venture capitalist, I'm going to put myself on the spot here and see what comments you have. But how do you see the venture capital, within Singapore, really shaping the robotics and AI ecosystem, not just by funding technologies, but by really trying to connect the dots between research, regulation, commercialization, industry adoption as well? Yeah. Any perspectives on that? And no firing bullets at me, please.
This is where I look at NRPO. Yeah.
Right. Meng Fai, would you have a response?
No.
I'm kidding.
No. To be very honest, we are very happy that National Robotics Program Office is driving this,
Yeah.
and all the agencies of course IMDA, we are fully behind them. How we can work with them to strengthen this whole ecosystem, be it capabilities, financing, market development. I think it's all hands on deck in that sense. Of course with the IHLs definitely will be, and of course with big companies like Hyundai, we hope we can strengthen this whole effort in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah, just as you asked the question, Iping entered the room, so we can ask our questions afterwards.
Shout out here to Iping and Meng Fai, right? Doing a fantastic job
Amazing.
supporting the robotics ecosystem.
Yes.
So shout out to you guys as well.
Thank you so much. So I'll just talk from my perspective, like my personal experience. Like I've studied in North America and Canada, and I did have partners, a lot of them in US as well. So when I came to Singapore, I felt it was like heaven for research, because it's amazing now how easily you can actually start to impact policies and like work in real world problems. So being at Smart there, working with the self-driving car team and leading that effort, in like my first few months, I was actually in One North with the vehicle, deploying our algorithms there, like checking out like how we can improve that, and then going to CTRIN for certification purpose. And I was like, amazing, the whole ecosystem is very supportive in the sense of like, how do you standardize these processes? How do you bring them into everyday life? So it's not like our academic research is just sitting in books and papers, but it's actually going out into the real world, making a physical impact, and bringing that technology closer to everyday life. And that was very meaningful and rewarding as a researcher per se. Like I would always feel like, hey, I can actually touch lives by use of technology and like bringing my innovation to the real world. So hats off again to NRPO and all the national initiatives that are out there, including IMDA, and bringing that, being the glue between industry and academia. I think a lot of countries face that challenge of not being able to fulfill that gap, and I think Singapore is doing an amazing job there.
So I can then say, so Hyundai here, our innovation center is the only innovation center for manufacturing globally. And the reason why it is in Singapore is because of the Singapore government Smart Nation Initiative, NRP, the ecosystem of all the research institutes, especially ARTC, as well as IHLs and also the government agencies. Without this ecosystem and partnerships with startup companies, we wouldn't be here. So this is one of the reasons why Hyundai is here in Singapore.
Love it. Absolutely love it. I completely agree, looking at it from an investor standpoint. I think we have such a supportive ecosystem. Having worked in the US and Australia, I'll say Singapore is an amazing ecosystem of support. And in fact, to some of the startups, I tell them, if you can't succeed in Singapore, life's going to be a challenge for you outside, because there's a very big support network. When you look at investors and policymakers, I think, Malika, you alluded to policymakers earlier. Do they recognize that getting different perspectives is actually not just a social imperative, but it's a strategic advantage? It's about risk management, it's about resilient businesses, it's about human-centric robotics. Do people get that? And if not, what do we need to do to educate on that perspective?
That's a tough challenge everywhere, right? Like how to voice out and be part of the conversation while, like, if the doors are not open to you. But I feel like, again, at a policy making perspective, if the simple thing that we can think about is that 50% of our population is coming from will also be the recipient of this technology or the robotics edge, how do we sort of support that? Because if that perspective is missing while we are making that technology, then it will be very difficult to serve that set of population. So I'm in no position to sort of like put to the education level of the authorities, but like I think that's what I would personally think, like if I'm in that position, that missing out any part of the population will be detrimental to the process, because we are missing out an important perspective in general. So yeah.
No, thank you for that. I'm cognizant of time, and I do want to actually talk about something that I think the audience would like to hear, because they want to hear your personal journeys as women in robotics, as leaders in this world. And I think robotics is not an easy field, and each of you has had to carve your own path with difficulty. You've had to overcome challenges to be where you are today and to prove yourselves, right? So looking back at your own journey, what barriers have sort of shifted with each of your personal journeys, and what are some of the challenges that remain, particularly for women, since it's a diversity panel, in areas of whether it's robotics or advanced engineering or AI? I'd love to hear that.
Wow, that's such a great question. Where do I start? So my background is in mechanical engineering and computer science. I have a double degree in both. I think starting my career, it was very important to have a good company that was interested in training. And domain expertise here is very important. I wouldn't be where I am here now if it wasn't for understanding how production machine works, how to program, how to design machines and things like this. This is all needed. A lot of interns ask me, how do they get to a manager? And I said, look, you need at least 10 years of domain experience to get there first, so that you can actually guide the team and provide leadership. So coming back to the question about countries and diversities, I've worked in 3 different countries: Belgium, Australia, and Singapore, and also Germany, actually, 4. And I've seen different ways of tackling talent growth. So for me, what Singapore is doing in terms of the talent and also what the IHLs are doing is pretty amazing. It is in the right step. In terms of barriers, I think I still see a huge gap between my graduates and where I need them to be. So within Hyundai, we created a training program to accelerate people's learning, our graduates' learning. And this is really important, that we give back to the community, but also give back to IHLs the feedback that, what are the key areas that the robotics area needs, or Industry 4 needs, or Industry 5 needs. So those are the barriers that I've seen.
I love it. It's a barrier.
There's none.
But you're solving for the barriers, right? You see the barriers and you're creating a solution. I love that. Malika?
Like from my perspective, my journey has been quite meandering one. Like, so I've never set out to like exactly do robotics, but it actually eventually became. So I have a degree in electronics, electrical, and computer science as well. So taking all that different perspective really allowed me to enrich my own learning experience while I was going through the formal education. And yeah, I think one of the important challenges which I faced, like, I mean, I grew up in India. We didn't have like any specialized robotics program, and in order to kind of like get that advanced degree, I had to step out of the country to do that. And now I think, like, again, in terms of Singapore, like, we are doing amazing in terms of bringing in these world-class universities to campuses in our universities locally here in Singapore. I think that's a really great move. And in terms of like bridging the gap with industry, I mean, I hear you, and like from our perspective, we always are like training people with the latest technology. So for example, the robotics course that I teach, we have all our students trained in ROS 2, and they are basically learning their fundamentals of robotics on 110 size self-driving car. So doing that hands-on experience, and that's a little bit that we are doing to like bridge the gap with between the academia and industry. I think like some of the important barriers that we can still kind of like focus on is to sort of unify these efforts across universities. So that's what we are trying to do at this stage, where the barriers to kind of like not go and like be able to maybe audit a course or take a course in another university was sort of like a bit alien previously, but now you can actually take any courses anywhere and locally, at least in the universities, and I think that that's a really strategic move, that you can actually pick courses and then take those particular courses in other universities as well. So I think that's going in the right direction.
Love it. Bring us home, Sam.
I think I'm another odd one out. I'm actually an English literature major, so but I'm in the area of tech, yeah. And I think what you said speak to me, because attending courses, go and finding out the different technologies. Don't be scared of it, right? Get your hands dirty, because technology changes every day, and there are always new things that's happening. How do we stay on top of it? So that's something that personally I try to continue to upgrade and learn, to be aware of what's coming. And the same thing when I tell my companies when I work with them. A lot of them, they're in different sectors, right? And they're like, oh, Gen AI, robotics, so I would tell them, don't be afraid. Let's just take that step. Let's go and talk to some partners, go to the IHLs. Let's just see how we can learn together. More importantly, it's an enabler. Technology is not for the sake of technology. It's an enabler to achieve certain things. Yeah. So to me, I think the greatest impact I saw in one of our logistic firm, the 72-year-old staff, and he's still working there because the stuff that he's doing, he has robotic arms helping him. And all he does is just monitor it and then just making sure things are happening well. And if there's issues, he will be able to stop it and tell his supervisor. And this is a 70-year-old guy. And I'm very impressed that we can do this for the workforce and continue to contribute, to continue to stay active in that sense.
I love it. Absolutely wonderful hearing from all three of you. In fact, I'm inspired. I wish I was like 20 years younger and I would start again, because clearly you've had challenges. And what I really am inspired by is each of you is trying to solve those challenges so the next generation doesn't have to go through at least the same ones that you all faced. So very inspiring, and thank you for that. So for the audience, if there's one thing you can take away from this session, women are not just a part of a robotic story. They're actually, you can see from the stage, they're writing the next chapter of that story. So thank you so much for our incredible panelists. Could we have a huge round of applause, please?
Thank you, Suchitra.
Thank you so much for the very inspiring conversation, sharing very candidly about the journey, overcoming all the challenges. Can we please gather you for a group shot? And of course, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you were inspired as well, listening to the stories of how they overcame and coming together. And truly, like what our moderator is saying, Suchitra is saying, is that they are writing the new chapters of robotics ahead. What a treat it was listening to them. And of course, we got a few more presentations to go, and we have Meng 5 Phi happening again. Give us 3 seconds for that. Pose, and we captured it. He's quite an expert in doing